All right. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Matt San Regret. I am Vice President of Sales here at Payroll Systems. Hopefully everyone is staying safe and healthy and looking forward to a nice presentation today. Today's webinar is all about remote work, anticipating the speed bumps. It seems this pandemic is here to stay for a while, and therefore a much higher percentage of folks are working remotely as well. This can mean teams that are new to remote work. You used to report to an office, but now we're working from home. But it also refers to non-traditional offices, your construction sites, home health care, other remote type offices. So we're excited to present some great information. This is a very relevant topic right now. Want to encourage group discussion, want to encourage some interaction with the group. And so everybody who's on the line, please familiarize yourself with the question section. We will be fielding questions throughout the webinar, and we also will save time at the end of the webinar to answer all of your questions. Okay, so find the question section. You can post a question. Sometimes it's nice to just reply during the webinar, or we can save it till the end of the webinar. Also posted the presentation as an attachment or a handout. So please check the handout section there, and you can download the actual slides from today's presentation. And we will be recording the webinar, and that typically gets posted within a day or so. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Let me introduce Payroll Systems to you. We have a payroll slide. And for those of you not familiar with Payroll Systems, we've been a leader in services such as payroll, time and attendance, consumer-directed health plan administration, as well as human capital management software for well over 25 years. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area, have clients that range from 1 to over 1,000 employees throughout the United States. Okay, so welcome. I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, and that's Julie Chendis. Julie's an experienced HR professional located in the Bay Area. She founded her business, Next Level Strategies, 15 years ago. Next Level assists clients with all facets of employment, including recruiting and hiring, developing leadership to improve business performance, enhancing productivity and job satisfaction with employees, guiding companies through terminations, separations, reductions in workforce, and negotiating what is certainly a maze of employment law compliance. Next Level Strategies has clients throughout California, as well as Austin, Texas, and New York City. So thanks, Julie. Really appreciate you taking time. I know it's a busy time of year for you, like everybody else, but glad you could spend a little bit of your time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
You betcha. And let me run through the agenda and we'll get going. So topics for today, we want to talk about the compliance piece of remote work, do a little housekeeping on that, management challenges of remote workforce, and conversely, want to talk about management strategies dealing with a new or existing remote workforce. Communication, a challenge for an office environment, a challenge for any work environment, even more of a challenge for remote workforces. And finally, assessing remote performance. So great topics today. Finally, we will save several minutes at the end of the presentation to have a formal Q&A. So please, again, find the question section of the webinar software. You can post questions anytime there. And we also will be displaying certainly the Payroll Systems contact information, as well as Next Level Strategies contact information. So if you're looking to continue the conversation, you'll be able to reach out after the webinar as well. And with that, Julie, I'll turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you kindly. All right, we're not attorneys, but we've put every effort in to make sure that everything that we're telling you is accurate. Okay, I want to start out with compliance. Just to back up to March, we all sent our employees home for ostensibly 2 or 3 weeks. That's what we thought. Here we are, 7 months later, 8 months later, right, almost 8 months, and people are still at home. So we didn't plan for it. We just sent them home, and we tried to figure it out after the fact, or didn't figure it out at all because we thought that they'd be back soon. So where does that leave us now? What leaves us with now is we've had a number of conversations with plaintiff side attorneys who have been talking about what the next round of litigation is going to be, and it's going to be related to, unfortunately, sending people home without a plan. I'll tell you a few of those things. Just the next slide. So something to note, and I'm going to lead off with the thing that's probably the biggest nightmare of everything I'm going to say today, which is that when you have a brick and mortar and everyone works out of the same location, you only have to follow the laws of the location people work out of. If they're sent home, you have to follow, well, I usually say wherever the butts are in seats, that's the law that you have to follow. So if you're, headquartered in San Francisco, now you've got people working from Los Gatos, Alameda, Marin, Martinez, right? You're going to follow the laws in those cities, and that becomes a little bit cumbersome. I think if you can stick with San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, some of the cities that have the living wage, mandatory sick leave, and things like that, you're probably fine. But just so you know, think of it oppositely. If you're located in Martinez normally, and you send everybody home, and you got a bunch of folks that work in the city, there's areas you might be out of compliance in. So something to talk to your HR consultant or your attorney about, just to make sure that you've got that dialed. Okay, regularly check relevant health county department guidelines or CDC. If you're outside the Bay Area, CDC might be where you need to be. If you're outside the state, for sure, almost, it's going to be CDC. Inside the state, inside the Bay Area, each county has its own health guidelines, things that you have to do. If somebody's positive, you've got to report it. There's certain quarantining regulations and things like that. Some counties are updating constantly, like Alameda updates regularly, San Francisco updates regularly. Some of the other counties don't, but make sure you've kind of got that on bookmarked, the old school equivalent of speed dial, because it's important stuff. Make sure you're doing all this stuff right. And I know that the target keeps changing on a day-to-day basis. Believe me, I know. We authored a 90-page complete COVID guide for employers, and we've already had to update it 4 times and have it recopyrighted. Things just keep changing. I get it. That's why we're here. I'm trying to help you with some good information that you can take with you. Starting in January in California, contact tracking is on point now. You have to notify county health departments within 4 hours. So you still have to notify them, but now it's within 4 hours of learning someone has COVID. There's notifications for employees. So if one of the coworkers gets sick, that things, you should be telling coworkers, other employees anyway, using a certain format, so that they can quarantine, so that they can take care of themselves. But now you must notify employees, clients, vendors in writing of possible exposure. I would start now, like the last sentence says. I would not wait until January. And the only way to control this is to make sure that people know that they've been exposed so that they can stay home and not expose other people. But if you're not contact tracing and tracking who's coming in and out of your workspace, it's going to be really difficult to notify people that they've been exposed. The orders still say in all the Bay Area counties that you must utilize telework to the extent that you can. So keep doing what you're doing if you've got people teleworking. Matt, is this a good time for the poll maybe?
Yeah, great time for the poll. Let's make sure everybody's paying attention here. Pop this on the screen. So we want to find out what percentage of your team is still working in their traditional workplace, the same place they were working a year ago. They haven't gone remote. So take a minute, please answer that question, and we'll share the results here. Give it just another second or two. We got a lot of A lot of answers coming in. All right, looks like looks like just about 20 to 25% are still working in the office. Well over half, about 2/3, are not working in the office anymore. All right.
That's good to know. That is good to know. Pop any questions to Matt into the chat, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. I'm trying to go fast here to cover a bunch of stuff. Okay. This is a big deal. If you're in California, Labor Code 2802 requires you to provide the tools that employees need to do a job. This could be anything. It could be uniforms and sending people home. It could include their technology, their cell phone, computer, mouse, printer, monitor, the electricity to run all those things, plus Wi-Fi. So this is another thing that we did when we sent everybody home in March. We didn't have a plan in place to pay a stipend or an allowance. Certainly, it can be a reimbursable thing so that you've got the tax benefit for it as an employer. You don't have to pay the whole thing unless they've got a dedicated phone that's only for you or something like that. But if they're using their personal cell phone and they're using it personally as well as for professional reasons, you'll pay an allowance. It should slide on a scale based on how much they're expected to use their phones. In my company, kind of slide along a $50, $25 to $50 is what I reimburse. I reimburse electricity and Wi-Fi as well. I think I pay about $75 to $100 per employee, depending on how senior they are and how many hours a week they work, for instance. With regard to uniforms, just since we're on the topic, if they're logoed and it's a chicken suit, you have to pay for it. If it's black slacks and something they could wear with another outfit, you don't have to. The amount has to be reasonable and fair, again, based on the time that they work and how intensely they're on Wi-Fi or the phone. Claims for this are increasing. And in fact, an attorney told me last week that they're already starting to see claims for reimbursement of rent and mortgage. So far, these have been denied. But I have a feeling that this is going to be something coming down the pike. And I'm not happy about it, but there you go. One person put in a request for reimbursement for toilet paper that kind of made HR news because their argument was, hey, when they're at work for 9 hours a day, they're using company toilet paper and now they have to pay for their own. So, and reimburse me, please, employer. So if you see that coming, I want my toilet paper and my rent reimbursed, that you're going to have to do the cell phone, the computer, and some of those things. Stipends. If somebody refuses to go back to work, say you open up your office in January and someone says, you know what, I'm in a high-risk group, I'm not going back, right? If there is a place to go and all of these things are provided and they don't go to it willingly, I'm told that there's a workaround for that and the stipends don't need to be paid. I would make sure that that's documented and it's very clear that it's the employee electing to stay home and not you, doing any sort of monkey business or whatever with it. Just make sure it's on the up and up and super documented. I guess before I slide off this, because I know I didn't put this on here, the other big area of concern here is ergonomics. We sent people home, they're working on folding chairs and card tables, and they've been doing that now for 8 months, right? So having that be the situation for 2 or 3 weeks is one thing. 8 months is people are getting hurt. We have a partner who does ergonomic assessments remotely, really inexpensively, like I think it's $75 per employee. It might be worth it. I can get you the contact information if you're interested, but definitely now is the time to start making sure that people have proper work setups so that they don't get hurt working from home. Okay. Managing non-exempt employees is a little bit trickier when we're not all in one place. That's for sure. So here's a couple of tips, right? Non-exempt means sometimes, this is a very simplistic thing for me to say, not quite accurate, but you'll get the point. Non-exempt can translate to hourly, right? So the people who you're tracking time for, who are eligible for overtime, make sure that you have a solid policy and process for time tracking when people are remote. We're already seeing claims for this as well. People are working bits and pieces, fits and starts. They're working around families and kids at home. We totally get it. We're all kind of making do. And unfortunately, desperate people do desperate things. And so what's happening is, people are working sometimes after midnight. That time goes on to the next day, right? So we've got to have some sort of structure in place to say, here's when we expect you to work. Here's when we don't expect you to work. We want people to have freedom, but we've got to be careful that they're staying within the 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week guidelines, or we're paying overtime. Sending texts in and off hours could prove that overtime hours are being worked. That's come up now with some cases. If you've got people who are starting work during this pandemic, when your office is closed, we're using e-signature software. We're sending out kind of prepped new hire packets through e-signature software and then walking people through their onboarding process using video conferencing. It's not perfect, but it definitely works and gets the job done. You're required to post posters. And if people have been in the office, they certainly have seen the posters, but for new people, or just if you want to make sure your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, some ideas to manage posters are taking photos of the existing ones, each quadrant maybe, and then uploading them to an intranet or something like that, or emailing them out to people. You could cobble all the information on the posters together into some sort of PDF document and email that out, or you could just buy posters for each employee and have them sent to their home. They're about $30 a piece, so it's not a huge expense unless you've got a whole lot of employees, and it doesn't make sense at all. But if you have 15 or 20 employees and you're going to be remote for a while or indefinitely, you could think about that. But those are some strategies for managing posters and new hire paperwork. Any questions about compliance and the law before I move on to kind of managing a remote workforce?
Yeah, so far we just had a couple quick inquiries that
Sure.
that we've handled on the chat, Julie. So I think we can move on.
All righty. Managing remote workforces. So one thing that I will say that I say through here a few times is when we're all in an office together, it's so easy and natural. If I'm heading to the lunchroom and I walk past Matt's office and, I see Matt in there and the door's open, I can go, oh, right. There was this thing I've been meaning to ask Matt about. I'm going to stick my head in and say, hey, Matt, you got a second? And he'll say, sure, or whatever. And I'll go in and plop myself down and we'll have our chat. It's more organic, right? And it's more effortless and more reactive, right? When we all are at home and in disparate locations, we have to be proactive about communicating. It takes more effort. It is less natural. And it's just something to think about as you're managing people remotely. They can't just pop by your office and stick their heads in. So setting the thing. So keep that in mind as I'm going through the challenges and solutions. So there's a challenges page, and then there's a solutions page. So I promise it won't be all bad news. But the overarching point is that it's not organic anymore. So,
hey, Julie, let me chime in here as well.
Sure.
We don't have a poll question, but I'm curious, and people can just pop it in the question or chat feature there. But how many of you are actually using a instant messenger type of software, a Microsoft Teams or Skype or something that's connected to your phone system for just chatting online and letting people post whether they're available or not available? So just chime in on the chat. I appreciate that. Yeah, Slack, Zoom, exactly. So good. Just curious. So keep chiming in. That's good interaction. Sorry to interrupt, Julie.
Oh, no problem at all. So the challenges with reduced visibility, working remotely is that there's reduced visibility and camaraderie, right? You don't get somebody's vibe over email and text sometimes, over electronic communication, and that can cause sometimes misinterpretation. People can perceive a tone, finger quotes, where there's no tone. Some people are really abrupt over text, and I see that generationally. I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I'll send this whole, and I'm texting in complete sentences. I use capitals and punctuation, and they write me back 2 or 3 words that may or may not actually have any relevance to each other. There's no punctuation, there's no capitalization, right? So there's a generational aspect to how we're communicating over electronic format that can be misinterpreted or misunderstood. And it just is what it is. It's not good or bad, or there's no judgment. It just know that there's a possibility for misinterpretation, right? And lack of in-person contact, said that one. Sorry. Less personal interaction can lead to negative assumptions about productivity, work ethic, and professionalism. Here's what I mean by that. If I don't see you working busily outside my office in your cube, I don't necessarily know that you're working. Unless there's like a very measurable output to your job where I can track the output and see exactly what's getting done. Same thing with coworker to coworker. We had a client call and say that, and this is happening a lot with people managing kids at home. That's why there's a huge chunk of law that got passed that was effective April 1st that allows people to have up to 12 weeks of paid time, 2/3 pay, up to $200 a day to help kids at home. So a client calls and said, I've got an employee who's got 2 kids at home and they're both young, and she's helping them Zoom learn during the day, and she's only able to work about 5 or 6 hours a day, and it's really making everybody angry, and so I want to fire her. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not the right play at all. So I suggested that the woman uses the expanded family medical leave for the couple 2 or 3 hours a day she can't work, and then her normal time working. The point is that her coworkers are only seeing what she can't do and her lack of availability versus what she's actually getting done. And that's happening a lot. Something to keep an eye out for as a manager. So as a manager, right, you don't have real-time supervision like you do when your people are working outside, in a cube 10 feet away from you, where you can lean over their shoulder, see what they're doing, listen to them on the phone with clients or whatnot, right, and be able to correct performance and behavior right away. So the quick spontaneous interactions are more difficult. Like I said, there's less sort of organic communication, more having to be proactive. Less opportunity for one-on-one feedback unless you schedule it, and that is in our solutions page. Employees can fear, so know this as managers or as HR, they fear reduced access to management, right? They're new on the job. They're less experienced in their careers, and they like having you 10 feet away. They like being able to ping you when a question comes up in the moment, right? So just know that access to you is important to people. It's a more time-consuming communication process. Like I said, you have to be more proactive. It's not going to happen naturally. You've got to reach out, schedule things. Coordinating calls, calls and video meetings. There's 4 of us on a thread. Even if you're using Calendly, sorry about that, or some other tool, it's still hard to coordinate schedules versus just popping by someone's office and saying, hey, you got a minute? Let's go join Joe and talk about this thing. Collaboration and teamwork can be impacted depending on what type of an industry you're in, and response times increase. Because you ask me at 4:30 in the afternoon if I can meet the next day, I might not get that email until the next day. So there's a delay in response time because of electronic media. All right, more challenges and things to think about. The feeling of isolation, right? There's reduced social interaction, reduced team engagement. I know some of you have probably done an excellent job at doing virtual happy hours, Um, a couple groups I'm in, we did some virtual poker tournaments. Apparently now there are virtual escape rooms. Another group I'm in sent out a box of stuff so we could actually have a happy hour together with snacks and drinks and a cute little logoed mug and the whole 9 yards. And everybody got on the call and did happy hour together with the same ingredients and access to snacks and booze. And of course, you could not include the booze. We did those like little skinny girl cosmopolitan packets. So you can just add that to fizzy water if you didn't want to drink. But there's all these options out there, and people are getting sick of them. I get it. It's hard to know what's too much for people, but the disconnection from work that's collaborative in nature is definitely coming up. And it can inhibit creativity and productivity when you can all be in a room together and you can get that energy flowing and you're brainstorming and you're writing things on a whiteboard or whatever works for you and your specific industry and company culture. That can really get the juices going. We don't have that anymore. Okay, I did talk about ergonomics in here. I wasn't sure if I did, but not having a proper setup, not having access to the same technology that you do in the office, that can slow people down for sure. Interruptions from family members, housemates, pets. I mean, even though my kids are older and I've said, listen, if you hear me talking on the phone during the day, don't come in the room. Don't send me a text if you're leaving or something. They'll still come in. They wander in to pet the cats, honestly. I can't imagine what people with 5 and 6-year-olds are going through. If the 16-year-old and the 20-year-old wander in the middle of my day, in the middle of my call with a client to pet a cat. So I'm sure you're all going through it. People are being really tolerant. I mean, really tolerant of kids and pets and construction noises or whatever else is going on for people. And I hope you all continue to do that because I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. And home demands that can interfere with work. I mean, everybody with school-age kids is going through that, which again is why Congress passed the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and the Expanded Family Medical Leave Act as part of that, effective April 1st. If you have questions about that, let us know, because that's a big deal that you know that and know how to apply it. It's all reimbursable by the federal government immediately on the next payroll. So sorry to veer off, but that one's important. People still don't understand it. Anybody with kids at home should be offered expanded family medical leave. Expires on December 31st. Won't continue into next year unless they extend it. So just so you know. Performance management. This is the biggest deal. Ish. I mean, they're all big deals, but here's performance management, right? The first bullet is the most important. Like I said, we sent everybody home and we didn't have a plan. We didn't have a plan for reimbursement. We didn't have a plan for their technology. We didn't have a plan for the fact that they're sitting, on a folding chair at a card table trying to work. We didn't set up parameters around time, availability, software, all of it, right? So it's almost like we said to our employees, hey, let's all go swimming. We've got the water, but we have no structure to swim in. So what do we all have? Mud. There's nowhere to swim without a structure. So sometimes people, I feel like, bristle against structure, but structure creates, like I said, creates the swimming pool that we can all swim in. So think about that. Right? So there's delays in delivering feedback. Like I said, if someone's right next to you, you can deliver feedback in the moment. If you hear something being said that's off or off brand or off culture, there's a reduced opportunity to assess training and development needs for new hires. Potential shift from proactive to reactive performance management. I think we've talked that one to death, so I'll just go to the next slide. Those are the challenges.
Hey, Julie? I might break in with a quick give you a breather to answer a question or two here.
I would love it.
First of all, thanks everybody for the feedback on remote messaging systems, virtual tools. Got a lot of Slack, got a lot of Microsoft Teams, a lot of Zoom, and a couple others. So a lot of technology out there being used for the instant communication piece, a little more real time than email. Couple things, just going back before we get too far away. Question came up of if a employee works in the office and gets COVID, do we notify the county that the office is in, or do we notify the county that the employee lives in? Again, if they're in the office part-time.
If they're in the office, then it's going to be in the office. Yeah, where the office is in that case.
But they're working from home part-time, so maybe the safe thing is to report both places.
Maybe, but I don't think so. And definitely report to workers' comp. That's another chunk of law going through right now. So people, anybody that gets COVID that's brought to your attention gets reported to the workers' comp carrier. If they think it was because of work, then they can go through the whole workers' comp process. It will not affect your XMOD. This is what we're being told. If they think they got it because they were at a party the previous week, you still report it to workers' comp, but you don't name any names. It's just like they're just trying to track all this stuff, I think. There's not a great tracking mechanism for how many people really are sick and where they're getting it from. So I think that's part of it, but that's how that works. So make sure you do that. Yeah, good. I don't know if I'd report it to 2 health departments on that. I think I would just report it to 1, the county that the office is in. Any other questions?
Yeah, not to inflate the statistics. Yeah, back to the labor poster topic. Can you go through that one more time? What the question is, what's the list of required posters for remote employees? And
yeah,
again, it's
I don't have
the
that
standard
list off the top of my
labor
head.
law poster. Yeah.
Yep. It's all of the stuff that would be on a poster. So I know there's, going by my memory, there's stuff about minimum wage. There's stuff about workers' comp and safety and where you report if you get hurt at work. There's stuff about leaves of absence, pregnancy, disability leave, things like that. There's always an EEO statement. I don't know it off the top of my head. I would have to.
I think you had said that. So you feel an acceptable option is to simply take a picture of the labor poster and email that to remote employees?
Yes, it is. It's not the mode of the information, it's that they get the information. It doesn't have to be in poster format. It can be in any format that they can read the policies and the laws easily, I guess.
All right. And one more and we'll move on. This is back to the topic of reimbursements for home employees and any other guidelines you can offer. The specific question was, how much money do companies reimburse their employees for a home office? And if you want to summarize your guidelines again for that real quickly before we move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I know there's always questions in all the seminars I've done about this. They're probably the most questions because it's going to cost you money. I've seen it kind of all over the place. My spouse works at a bigger corporation. They give them all $100 a piece, but they've also purchased expensive chairs, and they've all done ergonomic assessments. So if somebody needs a different mouse or keyboard or whatever, I did ergonomic assessments for my employees, and there was like one employee needed a footrest because their feet were dangling. There were a couple keyboard changes that we made and a couple mouse changes, and it was I would say it cost me less than $200 per employee to upgrade all of their equipment that the ergonomics expert said that they needed. So it was not expensive. I mean, the chairs are expensive. I didn't have to buy a new chair, thank goodness. So it sort of depends on your budget and your industry and how much time people are on the computer. People are sitting there in a terrible, again, the card table and the folding chairs is dramatic, but true story, people are. People that have roommates and things like that, they're just huddled in their bedroom with the folding chair and the card table. It could cost you more in a workers' comp claim than the $200 or $300 it's going to cost to upgrade the equipment. You kind of have to play it by ear. And if you're somebody, like I provide MacBooks for all my employees, but I have one client who's got their accounting manager working on a PC of her own at home that's probably 10 years old. She's having trouble running their accounting software and their payroll software on it. It's not a great situation. And I don't understand why. I mean, you can get a laptop, some non-Mac laptop for $300-400. I'm not sure why they're not doing it. It's not up to me, obviously, but I've made the recommendation a few times to get her a new computer, and I'm not sure why. They're not. She comes into the office 2 days a week because she can't use her own equipment at home. If you've got a situation like that, I think it makes more sense to spend the $400 or $500. It just does. Risking her getting hurt, and she's not a younger person. I would probably evaluate based on, again, your budget, the person's job, and the person's individual situation, if you can, or give an allowance to everybody if you can't do the one-offs. Give an evaluation to everybody and then set an allowance. Everybody has $200 to spend, $250 to spend. Have them submit reimbursement receipts, and then get them upgraded mouse, upgraded keyboard, whatever they need, a riser, that type of thing. Did that answer it, or can I provide more information?
I think that's real good. Please chime in if you need further clarification. And yeah, let's keep moving on.
All right, strategies. Here's the good stuff. All right. Like I said, we didn't set clear expectations back in March. There's always time. Do it now. Why not? Here are the expectations I'm talking about. Look at the job description to make sure that people understand what their requirements of the role are and how they might change based on remote work or not. What are the priorities, the deliverables, the deadlines? How are we going to communicate with each other, right? Providing that clear structure, I think, is so important. Like I said earlier in the slide on compliance, review time reporting requirements with people who have to track time, or people who you're tracking their productivity somehow. It's got to be a way to continue to do that. The virtual team building sessions, happy hours, set time aside at the beginning of meetings for chit chat, if that works for your team. Consider incorporating icebreaker exercises. I love this. In a further slide, I'm going to talk about how introverted employees, it's really hard for them to be on Zoom in a lot of ways. If everybody's in a room, it's so much easier to do round robin and draw people out that might be a little shyer or a little more reticent to speak up. On Zoom, it's so easy, really you can only have one person talk at a time, or it's, unintelligible. And it's really easy for less outgoing people to sort of just fade into the background and not be heard. And I don't love that. I really want to hear all those ideas. I want to hear ideas from every corner of the meeting. So you could start at the beginning with a round robin, with an icebreaker, so that people can participate and talk with each other. Virtual co-working days. All right. Facilitating ongoing communication and feedback. Anytime at the beginning, back in March, if you haven't done it already, do it now. Communicate meeting standards and the schedule for all hands meetings, team meetings, and one-on-one meetings. Again, you're going to have to go further out of your way to schedule time to meet with people. They can't stop by your office. Some of them are anxious because they don't have access to you. Make sure that you're doing your one-on-ones and your group meetings on a regular basis so people know that they've got a forum for feedback and communication with you. Allow time in meetings for questions, comments, and ideas. Encourage people to participate in discussions. Like I said, some people will try to fade into the background. We want to get people to participate from a remote distance. Provide frequent updates on progress, areas for improvement, and ongoing expectations. So again, managing remotely is not easy. You've got to kind of go out of your way, but these are the things to think about. You could take my bullets and turn them into the agenda that you use for each week's one-on-ones. You're welcome to it. Assess the training development and continuing education needs and opportunities. This is maybe a little harder. You might need to solicit feedback on this because, again, they're not right in front of you. Document meeting notes and action steps. There's some great software out there for that. Ensure clear messaging to avoid misinterpretation during phone meetings. Video is harder to misinterpret. You can see somebody's face, you see the interaction. It gets a little trickier when you're just on the phone with each other. Show recognition to people. It's, again, harder at the beginning of meetings. Hey, here's who did a great job this week, or here's, let's celebrate Terry. Terry did a great job, and here's why. So that people still are getting that feedback and those strokes, the positive feedback. Recognize signs of stress. People are stressed out right now. I mean, really, like way too much going on. Managing home and work simultaneously, things we've never had to go through before. People are worried about getting sick. I mean, there's a lot going on right now. Just keep that in mind. And, maybe add that to your check-in list for the one-on-ones. Hey, how you doing? What's something fun that happened this week or that you did for fun? Something like that you can get a sense of maybe their stress level. All right. Transparency and trust. I love transparency. I'm all about it. In times where things are changing, like they are right now, it's so important to be transparent and to talk, to communicate, even over-communicate. I mean, back in March and April, we were sending out, we usually send about 6 newsletters a year as laws change. We were sending them out almost weekly, just pushing information out because things were happening so fast. And sometimes the information was, hey, this law changed, and we have no idea what the fallout's going to be yet. We don't know. It's on our radar. We're going to let you know as soon as we know. There's something changing. That's all we got right now. But being open and honest, here are all the ways that your safety is absolutely paramount for us right now. Here are all the ways when we go back to the office that we're going to keep you safe. And you list out all your protocols, right? We're going to enforce these. We want you to sign off that you agree that you'll do all these things. Safety is our absolute number one priority. Things like that make people feel better about what's going on in the world and health. Give employees the benefit of the doubt. Ask questions. Hey, what's going on with you? This wasn't up to your normal, quality level. Is something happening at home? Something you need to talk about? You never know what you might find out. Challenges and mistakes are opportunities for growth. That is true whether people are working from home or working from the office. Avoid gossip. Communicate directly that, again, this isn't not just remote management tip. And then acknowledge their ability to shift and change and adapt. Right? Hey, great job. I know I didn't give you a lot of guidance. You did that. You just reread my mind. Well done. Some communication strategies. So, like I said, contact is less intentional. I've talked that to death. I'll move on. People should be encouraged to have a work-home life separation. It's so hard to do right now. Clearly communicate hours of unavailability to you so that we know when people can be counted on to be in meetings and things like that. How frequently should they communicate? Right? How, one of the strategies we used to do back in my high-tech days was we tell people that they had to be available in the office. This is obviously pre-COVID, from 10 to 3 in the afternoon. If you want to come in at 6 in the morning, or you want to leave at 3 in the afternoon to avoid traffic and you've got your 8 plus hours in, fine. But between 10 and 3, you're expected to be there so we can schedule meetings, right? Give them some structure that they can, again, that pool. All we've got is just a bunch of water and mud if we don't have a structure around it to swim in. And be mindful of people who are now working in different time zones. Shared calendars. People need to be told to keep them up to date. If they're non-exempt people and they're taking the meal, or even if they're not, and they're just going to go out to lunch with somebody and have a picnic, whatever, put it on the calendar so we can plan. The daily, weekly, monthly meetings for team, for company, for department, get them scheduled, stick to the schedule, use your tools, as we talked about earlier, lots of stuff out there. Communicate expectations around appropriate meeting etiquette, like backgrounds, room decor, and attire. Okay, this has gotten huge, and I haven't touched on it yet, but a lot of you are going to want to look at your dress code in your handbook. It's probably got to be updated. We don't care if people wear ripped up jeans to work anymore or athletic wear, because who's going to see them? However, there have been some things that have happened on video I'm not going to share with you, but if you want to Google it, that are pretty inappropriate because people weren't thinking all the way through about whether they were wearing pants or not, and then they go to get up to shut the door because the dog's barking, and alas, they're not wearing pants.
Come on, Julie, you got to share that one.
That's the one. That's what happened. True story. Just, I mean, you know, they had underpants on or whatever, but not pants. And who was going to see them? But then when the dog started barking and they popped up to shut the door, hello. There was another one that was floating around where somebody forgot that they were on Zoom and went into the bathroom, and people could see diagonally from the computer video camera into the bathroom. Think about these things, people. I mean, this is common sense, I know, but, and you know, some of the backgrounds. I've been really careful with my employees. We actually hired a person that came out and kind of said, here's how you present yourself best on video. Here's what your background should look like. We've got some really good backgrounds in my company, logoed. Looks like we're in an office. Very cool. Think about these things because this is the way of the world right now. So how do we want people to show up on video? And there we go. Remote performance assessment tips. I'm going to go, this is, I think, my last slide, and some of these things I've probably already talked about, and then I'll take as many questions as you have. All right. The first bullet, I just can't stress enough, right? We're in a different situation than any of us have ever been. We're working around remote schooling. Our kids and pets are at home. Our spouses are at home. I mean, they're all at home. Maybe our Wi-Fi isn't as fast. Our equipment isn't up to speed like it is in the office. It's not the same jumping off point. So are we judging people? Are we judging their performance? Now, again, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, we're into the 8th month of this. Almost a full year. Not almost, but, you know, more than half. Are you still judging people on the same level, performance-wise, that we judged before March? If you are, think about that. What needs to be adjusted in your expectations if people are doing all these things at home and making do with what they have, equipment-wise, Wi-Fi-wise, right? Just think about that. It's not the same jumping off point. So do your expectations need to change? Productivity issues definitely can come up because there's no face-to-face supervision. There's no team support. Have you set up metrics? If you haven't set up metrics, make sure that metrics and timelines are set up. Again, there's that structure, and you continue to hold people accountable, but again, hold them accountable, keeping in mind that they're trying to control their work and personal lives at the same time. Provide your ongoing feedback, set up, keep doing your quarterly review meetings, or whatever you're doing, weekly review meetings, monthly, whatever you're doing, even when things like this are going on, even more so importantly when things are in flux, right? More chaos equals more communication. More chaos equals more communication. Remember that. Evaluate quality, results, and outcomes instead of hours worked, right? Some of you get really fixated on, they didn't work 8 hours. Some people don't need to work 8 hours. It's almost like, remember when you were in college, there was that kid that used to be able to walk in, stone cold, no studying, no nothing, and ace a test. Those people exist in your workforce too. Some people are going to need to study for 10 hours. Some people aren't going to need to study. Focus on results and outcomes. It'll help you get through this time, for sure. And we've got all kinds of time for questions. 10 minutes for questions. Go for it. Ask me anything.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, Julie. I do have a couple. And again, just as we conclude here, wanted to say thank you to you. Appreciate your time today. And as you can see, everyone, we have put contact information up on the screen. Anybody wants to continue the conversation, there you go. Feel free to reach out to Julie directly. Feel free to reach out to Payroll Systems directly. Happy to continue the conversation. A couple of things have come in for you. So I think back to you, and you mentioned this briefly, is the employee handbook. Maybe you can summarize that again. We have a question is, our employee handbooks update, an update is overdue for our employee handbook. What do you recommend given the current regulations and policies that are in such flux?
Yes. All right. I'm going to go by my memory from our COVID guide and try to remember everything that needs to be updated. So all the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act stuff, if you're updating before December 31st, if it gets extended past December 31st, you're going to want to include all of that. Emergency paid sick leave, expanded family medical leave. You will have to update the workers' comp policy because of COVID. There's new laws, new regulations. Workers' comp for sure. Safety, your safety plan will need to be updated because of, personal protective equipment and things like that, all the new safety protocols. You may want to update dress code. You may want to update performance, the performance section, and how your communications policy, how you're communicating, some of these new structure things that you and I already talked about earlier, this presentation. A lot of clients are looking at benefits and things like that, and maybe reducing the number of hours people need to work. At least in this cycle, I mean, you can always change it for open enrollment next year, but we've got clients that are going from 30 hours of eligibility to 20 hours of eligibility so that they can catch people who are dropping down to part-time hours because they're managing kids in school and things like that. Oh, the biggest one, gosh, there's two of them that are 3 pages long, I swear to you. I wish I could make them shorter, but they're not. We have a really awesome communicable diseases policy. We've got to put a communicable diseases policy in there, I think. And then the last one, and now I feel like I've got them all because I knew I was missing something, remote work, right? Some of you already have a remote work policy. It will need to be updated. I'm sure things have changed. Some of you don't even have a remote work policy, and alas, people are working from home. Put some structure around it. I know if you was playing a drinking game for how many times I say the word structure, the glass would be empty, but structure, structure, structure. Go ahead, Matt.
Other questions. This is kind of a question or comment for you is Section 139 of the IRS tax code dealing with disaster relief payments. Not really a question in there, but just if you want to make any comments on that, Julie, if you're aware of the Section 139 of the IRS tax code.
I don't know. I'm not a tax person, and I don't play one on TV at all. I'm not sure if that's referring to something regarding the reimbursement for emergency paid sick leave or expanded family medical leave. I can talk about those reimbursements if that's what that's referring to, but I'm going to need a little more information to be able to address that.
Jody, if you have something further, go ahead and post that and we'll get to it. In the meantime, question on to speak a little more, give a little more info on the employee who elects to not return to the office because they are high risk. What accommodations can the employer make, or what accommodations must the employer make?
Right, great question. That one's come up a lot in this cycle, the last 8 months. Remote work has always been a reasonable accommodation that employers can make for people with disabilities. I think that you should follow your policy that you always follow for accommodation so that it's not a free-for-all. Most people, there's been some surveys, I want to say 80% of people love, 75 or 80 depending on what survey, love working from home. Love it. Don't want to go back ever. Doesn't matter if there's a disease. Don't care. I want to stay at home. I love it. Other people hate it and are still going to the office. So for those 75 or so people, when you open your office back up, if you're going to do that, there could be pushback. And then you might get requests for accommodation that aren't as legitimate as some other requests for accommodation that you might get. So follow your process for accommodation, which is getting a doctor's note, having them fill out, we've got a pretty sophisticated form for accommodation. What can you do? we don't want a diagnosis. We don't want to know what's going on with people. We just want to know what we need to do to accommodate. If you can accommodate and it's not an undue hardship for your company, go ahead and accommodate. If it becomes an undue hardship, look at that very carefully. Talk to an attorney, because one person's undue hardship is not another person's undue hardship. It's got to be kind of the legal definition. I don't know if that answered it or not, but again, put some structure around it so you can be consistent across employees who are asking for accommodation. What do you not have to accommodate? So we've had a few things come up. I'm going to keep going for just a second, Matt. People don't want to wear their masks at work because they have asthma or whatever. I would absolutely get that one documented. And most of our clients are just saying, you can't come to work then. You can't come to work. And if we can't accommodate remote work, then we might be at a standstill, because people have to be able to wear their masks at work. And you can enforce that. We've got in our COVID guide, we've got all the steps to enforce mask use and PPE use and proper protocols. They have to be able to keep other people safe while they're there. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much for everybody who attended. We had a very nice turnout today, and I think it was a great topic, Julie. Thank you for all your help. So again, we'll leave the contact information up for just another minute, and then we'll formally conclude the webinar. And let everybody get on with their day, sir.
My pleasure. And if there's one other question or something, we've got 2 minutes, I'm happy to answer something. And if not, then no problem. Everybody have a great day.